Hey everyone, it's John here, and in this video we're going to take a look at everything you need to know about the new XLOOKUP function in Microsoft Excel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for future Excel videos like this one. Now let's get started. So when should you use this function? You're going to want to use this function when you want to find and return data from another table in Excel. Now a quick warning here, this function is only going to be available in Excel for Office 365. And anyone using Excel 2019 or 2016 or any other earlier version is not going to have XLOOKUP. So that means if you're going to be sharing your file with anyone who does not have Office 365, then you're going to want to stick to VLOOKUP or index and match for your lookup functions. Let's take a quick peek at the syntax. So XLOOKUP has 3 required arguments and 2 optional arguments. First, we have the lookup value. So this is the value we want to look up. Next, we have the lookup array. And this is where we want to look in for our lookup value. And the last required argument is the results array. So this is the array of values that we want to return values from. And our first optional argument is the match mode. So this is where we can choose if we want to return an exact match or various other options in here. And we also have a search mode. So here we can choose to perform a search from first item to last item or last item to first item and a few other options as well. So let's head into Excel and take a look at this. The first example we're going to take a look at is an exact match lookup. And this is one of the most common use cases for a lookup function. So generally, we want to find an exact match and then return some value based on that exact match. In this example, we've got a list of countries and then some statistics about those countries. And here, I want to look up the country of Brazil and return its population. So we can use XLOOKUP for that. So the first argument is the thing we want to look up. So we want to try and find Brazil. And then we want to look in the list of countries here, and we want to return the population. So XLOOKUP has 5 possible arguments, but for this use case, we actually only need to use the first 3 arguments. So the optional match mode and search mode, if we don't put those in, they're going to default to an exact match from first to last. And in this example, that's exactly what we want. So let's close off our function and press enter. And we can see that in Brazil, we have a population of 208 million. And that's exactly what's returned by XLOOKUP. In this next example, we're going to use XLOOKUP to find and return values to the left of our lookup column. And if you're familiar with VLOOKUP, this is actually something that's impossible to do. So with VLOOKUP, you can only look to the right of your lookup column. So in this example, we're going to look up the capital city and then return the corresponding country. So we're going to be looking for Warsaw, and we're going to look in the capital column, and we want to return the country. And let's close our XLOOKUP function. And you can see that Warsaw, the corresponding country, is Poland, and that's exactly what XLOOKUP returns. So with XLOOKUP, we can easily return values to the left of our lookup column. In this example, we're going to use XLOOKUP to look up horizontal values. So in fact, XLOOKUP is going to replace both VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. So XLOOKUP can work with horizontal arrays as well. So here we've got a list of months across the columns. And we're going to use XLOOKUP to return the total for one of those months. So again, the first argument is the thing we're looking up. In this case, we're going to be looking up the month of February. And we're going to look in this array of values here. And we want to return results from here. And again, we're going to do an exact match. So we just need the first 3 arguments. And when we press enter, we can see that for February, our total is 2020, and that's exactly what XLOOKUP is returning. So XLOOKUP works with vertical values, but it also works with horizontal values and can be used to replace HLOOKUP. So XLOOKUP can work with both vertical and horizontal arrays of values, but you can't actually mix and match these. And to be honest, I couldn't think of an actual example where you'd want to do this. So I've got this example here where I've got a vertical array of values and a horizontal array of values. Let's see what happens if we try and use XLOOKUP to look up the value of B here and hopefully try and return the corresponding value of 2. So here we're looking up the value of B in our first vertical array here. And we want to return results from this horizontal array. And if we press enter, we actually get a value error. So XLOOKUP can't work with mixed arrays here and ends up returning a value error when we try that. So we just looked at exact match examples for XLOOKUP, but we can also do approximate matches. So in this example, we've got some percentage scores and corresponding letter grades. And we're going to use an approximate match to return the corresponding letter grade for a given score. So again, the first argument is the value we want to look up. So in this example, we're going to first look up 69.9%. And we're going to look in the score column here. And we want to return the letter grade. And now we're going to go to our optional argument, the match mode. And here you can see that we've got various options. So we have our exact match, which is the default. And after that, we have exact match or next smaller item and exact match or next larger item. So these are essentially our approximate matches. In this first example, we want an exact match or the next smaller item. And for that, the argument is -1. And we can finish off our XLOOKUP function and press enter. And you can see that we get a letter grade of C. And that's because 69.9% doesn't match any of these scores here. So we're going to return the next smaller item. And for us, that's 60%. And that corresponds to a letter grade of C. Let's just copy this down and see what happens with our other values here. So 70% does appear in our values here. So we get a B. So that's the exact match for 70%. And when we go up to 70.1%, again, we don't have an exact match for that. So we're going to return our next smaller item, which again is a B. Now let's just take a quick look at this same example, but instead of next smallest item, let's go with the next larger item. So the argument for that is 1. And let's copy and paste that down. So 69.9%, not in our table, so we don't have an exact match. But the next largest item is 70%, and that's a B. Here we have an exact match, 70%, that's a B. And here we don't have an exact match, 70.1%. Our next largest item is 80%, and that's an A, and that's what we get here. So that's an example of an approximate match with XLOOKUP. We can either do the next smallest item or the next largest item. In this example, we're going to take a look at how we can use XLOOKUP to search either first to last or last to first. So in this example, I've got a list of contacts, and I'm using XLOOKUP to search in the first name column and return the corresponding email address. So here I'm looking up Garrett. And notice in my list, I've actually got 2 Garretts. And XLOOKUP here is returning the email address for the first Garrett. So if we take a look at this XLOOKUP, you can see that I'm only using the first 3 required arguments. And this is actually the default behavior for XLOOKUP. So XLOOKUP is going to default to the first match that it finds. But in our optional arguments, we actually have the ability to specify if we want to search from first to last or last to first. So let's edit this XLOOKUP. And our first optional argument, which we didn't specify, is still going to be an exact match. So let's choose that. And then our 5th optional argument, you can see that we have the option to search first to last or last to first. So let's choose that one. So last to first, the argument is -1. And let's close off our XLOOKUP function and press enter. And you can see that I'm now returning the last Garrett in my list. So I'm returning his email address, garrett@webmd.com. Let's just press F2 to edit this. And we can also specify first to last if we want. That argument is just 1. Let's close that off. And we're back to what we had before, which is also the default option. So we're returning the first match here. With XLOOKUP, we can also find and return values based on multiple criteria pretty easily. And this isn't really a feature of XLOOKUP. It's actually a feature of the new calculation engine behind the scenes that's used by the new dynamic array functions. So let's take a look at how we can do this. In this example, we want to look up the email address based on both the first name and the last name, and those are in separate columns. Let's see how we can do this. So what we're going to do is create a lookup value based on the first name, and we're going to join that with an ampersand to the last name. And so the thing we're going to be looking up is just a concatenation of the first and last name together. Now we don't have a single column that contains that value, but we can create a column so we can do the same thing with our first and last name columns. So we're going to join that to the last name column as well using an ampersand. And so what we're essentially doing is looking for the first and last name joined together, and we're looking in the first and last name column also joined together. Now we want to return the email address, and we're going to try and find an exact match, so we can leave the optional arguments out and press enter. And you can see that I'm looking up Garrett Spratt, and that's the last Garrett in my list here. And I return his email address at webmd.com. So we can search for multiple criteria pretty easily with XLOOKUP. With XLOOKUP, we can also use wildcard characters. So one of the optional arguments allows us to specify that we want to look up and return values based on wildcard characters. So in Excel, we have the asterisk and question mark characters, which can act as wildcards. The asterisk allows us to replace any number of characters with a single asterisk. And the question mark character we can use to replace a single character. And we can use both of these to find and return partial matches in our data. So here I want to find and return the first value in my first names that starts with Joan and ends with any other characters. And here I would want to find and return a name that starts with JOA and has any 2 characters followed by an E. So let's use XLOOKUP to find these values in our data. Here's the value we're going to look for. And we're going to look in our name column. And we're going to return the email address. And here, instead of exact match or next smaller or next larger item, we're going to use the wildcard character match option. So that argument is a 2. And let's press enter. And the value here we get is J. Smith. And that's because the first item here starts with Joan and then has a couple characters after, but the wildcard asterisk character means we don't care what's after the Joan as long as we have that Joan in our item. So that's the first partial match here, and we get the corresponding email address there. Let's copy this down, and let's see what happens with our other item here. Here we're returning the email address for Joni, and that's because that's the first item that starts with JOA and then has 2 characters followed by an E. So we can use wildcard characters with our XLOOKUPs, but we need to specify explicitly that we want to use wildcards to return our matches. In this example, we're going to use XLOOKUP to perform a 2-dimensional lookup. So here I've got a table of exchange rates, and down this column I've got some currencies listed, and across this row here I've also got those same currencies listed. And for example, if I want the exchange rate from Canadian dollars to Australian dollars, then that's in the intersection of those 2 currency pairs, and so the value is 1.11. And we can actually use nested XLOOKUP functions to perform this lookup. So first, let's come up here and just perform a simple XLOOKUP. So let's look up euros, and we're going to look in this array here. And now for our results array, we need another vertical range. So we could pick any one of these. Let's check out US dollars. And we're going to do an exact match so we can omit the other arguments there. And the value I get here is 1.09. So you can see that what we're doing is finding euros and getting the US dollar currency rate for that. But this XLOOKUP is only ever going to return the US exchange rate. So for example, if we come up here and instead of euros, we pick Australian dollars, we get a result of 0.67. So what we actually need to do is, instead of this fixed range here, we need to look up and return that range based on our column headers here. Let's just press escape, and let's just do another XLOOKUP off to the side here. And this time let's look up our 2 currency. In this case, it's going to be Japanese yen. And we're going to look up in this horizontal range here. And we're going to return results from this entire table. And let's see what happens when we do that. Let's press enter. And you can see that what we get is the entire list of values in our Japanese yen column here. And so what we can actually do is use this result here in our lookup here as our results array. So let's come back here and let's just copy this function from our formula bar and come back to this function and replace this static range here with our XLOOKUP function. And let's press enter. And you can see we're looking from Australian dollars to Japanese yen. So we should get a value of 72.9, and that's exactly what we get here. Let's try changing this to Great British pounds. So Australian dollars to Great British pounds, 0.54, and that's exactly what we have here. So that's how we can use nested XLOOKUPs to perform a 2-dimensional lookup. In this example, we're going to take a look at how we can use the colon operator with XLOOKUP to produce a range of values. So off to the side here, for example, if we want to return the range of values for the populations between Brazil and Croatia, we could do that just by referencing the range. And you can see what happens is we have our first cell here, D9, and then a colon, and then the last cell here, D13. And if we press enter, we get that range of values here. Now we can actually do a similar thing with our XLOOKUP function. So I'm just going to copy my first XLOOKUP here for Brazil. So here I'm looking up Brazil as a country in my country column and returning the corresponding population. And if I come over here and copy this formula, which is looking up Croatia in the country column and returning the corresponding population, let's copy that and come back over here to this XLOOKUP function. We can join that with a colon to that XLOOKUP and press enter. And what we get is the range of values between Brazil's population and Croatia's population. So we can use the colon operator with XLOOKUP to return a range of values. So that's everything you need to know about Excel's new XLOOKUP function. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for future Excel videos like this one. That's it for this video. See you in the next one.